Hello everyone, welcome back to Inky Dink Scrap with Leanne Wagner. So my story today that I'm scrapping is about this amazing man called Colin Keast. We used to call him Keasty. And today I'm going to share with you the story of how he ended up in the wheelchair. And you can tell just how interesting he was just by the objects pictured in this photo. So if you're interested in finding out about the life of Colin Keast, listen in while I scrap his layout. Right, before we begin, I just wanted to mention that I'm going to be using, apart from the kit supplies, I'm going to be adding in some scraps of some of the mixed media that I've created. So there's a bit of some scraps of where I've used some of the texture paste that I've created, some work with oxide distress inks, some texture paste stencil work, and then something that I've been recently playing with is creating my own weathered wood look cardstock, which I will be doing a video about shortly. I've also used some of this material in one of my layouts that I'm doing in the 30 days of sketches. So if you haven't checked that out for October's 30 days of sketches, go and have a look at that. So Colin Keast was my dad's best mate and friend, and to me he was Uncle Colin, and for much of my childhood he was in my life, and unfortunately he passed away in February. He's had an amazing life, he's an amazing person, and he had some amazing stories to tell and skills and knowledge to share. Right, I'm back again after my fussy cutting. Okay, so I've got these wood veneer leaves, which are part of the kit as well from Uniquely Creative. And I think that they kind of get a bit lost in all the paper. And sort of, I've got too much same color happening. So I'm going to try and darken them with some distress ink simply by rubbing over the top. So I want them to be a darker brown, so they'll actually stand out a bit more when I attach them to my layout. Now, while I'm doing this, I'll chat to you about my Uncle Colin. Okay, so Uncle Colin, unfortunately, was one of the young men that was conscripted to during the Vietnam War. He was my father's best mate at school, and also my stepfather's best mate as well. And luckily for both my stepdad and my dad, they had accidentally, as you do, sometimes it happens, they had gotten their girlfriends pregnant, and so both of their girlfriends, which of course one was my mother, made them ineligible for conscription. So apparently, and I'm just going on what I was told, that they got out of going to Vietnam because of the fact that they ended up married and had a child. For my mother, that child was me. So yes, I was an accident. I was one of those accidental pregnancies that happen with teens. Anyway, so Colin was not in that situation, and so had to go to Vietnam to war. So for any young man or woman, actually, that was involved in the war at all, in any form, whether they were working in an office, doing correspondence, or out there in the field, it was pretty horrendous experience. And many of them now, still, after all these years, suffer PTSD, post-traumatic disorder, from their terrible time they had throughout the Vietnam War. Anyway, for Colin, at one point, while he was out there, I'm going to say in the field, but yeah, fighting in Vietnam, he was shot down, and of course he was shot through his back, and his spine was damaged. So he was very injured, lying in a rice paddy, I believe, and expecting to die there. The situation at that particular time and place was they were under very heavy fire. It was a very dangerous situation, and for Colin, and of course his other mates that were there that were also injured, they didn't expect to get out. He expected to die there in that paddy field with his army buddies around him. So, of course, just like you see in all the movies, only this is real life, they called for help, and in the hope that the Australian Army would come in with helicopters and pull them out. Because that the situation was so intense and so bad, where that particular incident was occurring, the Australian Army would not come in. So it was pretty dire. It was a dire situation and pretty traumatic for everyone that was involved. However, luckily for Colin, sorry, I'm getting a bit emotional even talking about it, because it's pretty intense. Sorry. Pretty intense to think about that situation and him being there when you think about someone you've loved being in that situation. Anyway, so they're lying there expecting to die, and very luckily for him and some of his mates that were also injured, the Americans came in to get them out. So, big thank you to the American Army. So, yes, he was pulled out. He was rescued by the US Army. And it's the only reason that he survived. He would have died there. His injuries, of course, were so severe that he ended up as a paraplegic. And so he spent all his adult life, because I think when he went to Vietnam, he was 17, 18, something like that. When really his adult life was only just starting. But so for his whole adult life, he was in the wheelchair. And he went through, as everyone does in that situation, some really bad times, some very dark times, and sometimes where he wished they didn't bring him back and he wasn't rescued. But he's a strong man. He had an amazing life for someone that was in his situation. So of course he had years and years of rehab, and his home was modified to suit his needs, his car, all that sort of thing that happens, luckily in Australia, with government support for people in his situation. Whew, okay, so let's talk about some of the good parts. And while I'm talking about that, I will be matting up the photos. So I've got my photo mats here. I am going to be cutting out this bit because I don't want to waste this beautiful paper that I made. I really love this one of the weathered wood. So I'm going to just snip through here. I just drew a rough line on there, just so I can use this piece. I'll be able to use it for a tag or something in another layout, and it won't be wasted. Okay, so after, and it took many years, after he got over all the trauma of the situation and was gone through all his rehabilitation and was getting on with his life, he needed a career, and he did, I'm going to say play, because much like I've done, he changed his career several times over the years. So at one point he was a photographer. At one point he was an animal welfare carer. So he would rescue and look after any Australian animals that were injured and found injured. And he worked for the State Library at one point. And then what really was the career change for him was he got into taxidermy. So and that's why we've got these birds here. So he got into taxidermy and he started working for the Western Australian Museum, and he was there for many, many years stuffing dead animals. Now, back in the day, that was a big deal. That was a big thing, like it was common practice when you went to visit at a museum, you would see stuffed animals. And it was quite, common occurrence. Just trying to work out if I want to have this straight on or crooked. I think I'm going to go crooked, but I might leave those two straight. I think I'm going to add some ink to this as well. So, let's make it a bit aged and older looking here. So he worked for many years taxiderming animals, Australian animals, of course, because we're in Australia. And you would think that would be a fairly safe workplace environment. And of course, what he could do is, yes, he did work at the actual museum at times, but most of his work he could just work from home. Back in the days when that was not really a thing. He set up his studio at his house, including a photography studio and developing room. And he worked from home, which in itself was a bit strange back then because people just didn't do that. It wasn't a thing. Yep, I'm going like that. And he did that for many, many years. So then I'll just tell you one funny story, which I would just never forget. And as a kid, or I think I was a teenager then actually, he had told this amazing story. So one day he's at home and he didn't just work for the museum. He would do like commissions, private contracts. And, you know, you get people that want them to stuff your mail and fish, so to hang on the wall and that sort of thing. So one contract that he got was to stuff a big sea eel. Now, I don't know if you know anything about sea eels. You can get really small ones, but we're talking about the big ones. So, you know, they're like, think like anaconda snake, really. They're, you know, a python, big python. So they're like this round and can be like, well, 2-3 meters long. You know, they're big like a python snake, but they are sea snakes. Or sea eel it was. So someone had sent it down to him from Exmouth, which is one well known in Western Australia as one of the best places to go fishing. So it's a town up north of Western Australia. Everyone likes to go there on holiday, and they go out on their fishing charter boats and have a fabulous time fishing. It's very hot up there. One of my brother-in-laws and his family lives up there, and whew, it is hot. Anyway, so they sent it to him frozen, as you would do, because we're not, you know, we're not dealing with live animals here. And so he put it on. He had to get someone to get it out of his freezer, and it was a huge big box. And he had it defrosting overnight in his kitchen. And one of the things about these sea eels is that they can survive very cold water. So he gets up in the morning and goes to check out his frozen eel, and it's not in the box. No. It is crawling around the kitchen floor, going crazy, and he, of course, is in his wheelchair. Now I'm laughing. God, I've gone from crying to laughing. Can you imagine? So you've got like this 3-meter big fat python-like sea eel going crazy. Oh, and they've got really sharp teeth. They're really vicious and they will go you, you know. So this thing's going crazy on his kitchen floor. So, of course, he just couldn't deal with it himself because he was limited in his mobility with being able to even catch the thing, never mind get it back into the box, lift it into the box and what have you. So he rings my dad to come and help him. My dad lives at that point. They're both living up in the hills. But my dad was about a 40-minute drive away. Anyway, so my dad turns up to help Colin with this situation. And they just had to they're trying to both tackle this eel, catch it to start with, get it into the bloody box. And they couldn't damage it because you know, it needs to be in pristine condition for you to taxiderm it to start with. You know, it needs to be in pretty good condition. And the people that own the actual thing that had thought it was dead, they thought they'd killed it. Clearly, they had just knocked it out, stunned it. It was unconscious when they put it into the freezer to freeze it. And it wasn't actually dead. Big surprise for everyone. It's a very, I just think it's a hilariously funny story. And a little bit crazy. Can you imagine what it would be like if you're stuck in a wheelchair and you've got a 3-meter wild animal slithering and snapping around on your floor? Oh my gosh, some of the things that happened to him. And he did crazy things. Like, Colin was a man that would not say no to anything. And he would take huge risks all the time. He travelled the world in his wheelchair, often by himself, mostly by himself. Went to lots and lots of foreign countries. He had a full life, very full life. He was into pistol shooting and rifle shooting, and my dad, and he would always join different pistol clubs, do competition shooting, all that sort of thing. I used to go along. He used to teach us how to shoot, as did my dad. He taught all my siblings how to shoot. And he would go out camping. He would go goat hunting. You know, there was nothing that he wouldn't do and wouldn't try. And I just think, for someone to be like that, you've got to be brave. He would just never say no to anything. He would give anything a go. So he was pretty amazing what he would actually do. He would just fly everywhere and try anything. And he did do stupid things. You know, like he did silly things like, you know, race cars, for instance. And do... you know, daredevil type of stuff. Like, I'm sure if bungee jumping was around back then, he would have given that a go, because he was just, I guess when you're in that situation, you almost go, well, what the hell? What have I got to lose? Because I'm in this situation anyway. So why not live life to the full and do what you can while you can? Crazy stuff used to happen and go on. All right, I need to stop talking, but I just thought you'd like to know some info about Colin, because I just think he just lived life to the full. He was an amazing person, amazing man with a good heart and out for a good time, and very kind, would help anyone with anything as much as he could. And my dad loved him dearly. I think everyone loved him dearly. If there's one message from this man's life, it's that. Try everything, do everything, enjoy life. Don't waste time sitting around doing nothing. Life is too short.